Here we go.
All right. So this is a bit on operations. It's also a bit on the design of the layout and progress to date, etc. So I'm going to start with a geography lesson. So this map is from the 2005 edition of the Atlas of Saskatchewan, and this shows basically the natural vegetation in the province. So we start up at the far north with the subarctic woodlands. Then we get the northern boreal forest, the southern boreal forest, the aspen parklands, the mixed prairies, the dry mixed prairies, and then the Cypress Hills way down in the far corner there. And basically, the mixed prairie part, which is, you can see Rosetown and Moose Jaw, Regina within that. That's what most people think Saskatchewan is that little chunk. As you can see, most of the province is actually forested. The southern boreal forest here, sometimes called the near north, there is a lot of farmland into there, especially up around the Meadow Lake area and then around Prince Albert. It's sometimes called the forest fringe or the northern grain belt. I'm basically modeling the line from Prince Albert to Meadow Lake, which goes through the middle of that area. So it's sort of interesting because you go from open farmland into forest and then back into open farmland again. The name Meadow Lake is from the French lac de prairie, and not because it was a lake of water, because it was a lake of prairie surrounded by forest. And there's several thousands of acres in there of prime farmland that it's almost entirely encircled by the forest. So this is the railway network sort of at its greatest extent in that area. So here's the city of Prince Albert, about the middle of this. There's what is now the city of Meadow Lake. At that time, when I'm modeling, it was still a town up there. The red lines are CP, which you'll see are sort of in the minority. The green lines are CN, and then the blue lines are the joint tracks. So CP only got into Prince Albert through joint trackage, from Northway up to Prince Albert, from Sharp Junction down to Prince Albert, and then from Prince Albert out through Shellbrook and Debden. This piece of track here, the Blaine Lake subdivision between Prince Albert and Shellbrook, even though it was a branch line, would usually have 3 or 4 trains a day, because all the crews are based out of Prince Albert. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines which have to travel over that piece of joint trackage. This is the city of Prince Albert. Now this map is drawn upside down. This is south is at the top. I do that is partly because it's the way the layout is orientated, but this area in here from this top track down to the river, that's the river flats. And then right behind the yard, there's a very steep hill. So it makes sense to build a model because then the hill forms your backdrop. And I'm talking with my hands, which you can't see. Basically, the first line was called the Qu'Appelle Long Lake in Saskatchewan. And it built up from Regina in 1890. And they established, can you see my cursor on the screen there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I need to talk with my hands somehow. Anyway, they built their yard here near the intersection of 15th Street and 4th Avenue West and established a station. That was 1890. There was a sawmill, which is established down in what's called Goshen Place, which is way down here. And this, sorry about that. There we are, way down here. So they extended their line across here and then down this way out to Goshen Place and actually established that at the time as a separate station. 1905, 15 years later, they got the second railway came to town. The Canadian Northern came in from the east, established the yard here, and then swung north and across the river and off the North Battleford. shortly after that, they did that, the Canadian Northern bought the Qu'Appelle Long Lake in Saskatchewan, so they built this connector track here and got rid of the Diamond Crossing that used to be located over here, and all became one company. In the 1910s, about 10 years after all that happened, the Grand Trunk Pacific came in basically from the south, crossed the Canadian Northern just east of town at Cudworth Junction, and rolled in and established their yards and stationing here. 1920, Canadian Northern, Canadian and Grand Trunk Pacific became part of the Canadian National. The Grand Trunk line up the hill was abandoned. What had been the Diamond Crossing became a switch, and they put this connector track in here, and the Grand Trunk yard basically became a storage yard. They did establish their freight house here, as well as a lot of industry. Finally, in 1930, Canadian Pacific arrived in town using trackage rights. They built a small yard adjacent to the Grand Trunk yard, and in order to get all trains backed into the yard and pulled out. So a CP train coming in from Lanigan would come in here. They would come around the Y down the old sawmill lead. Now, the sawmill was actually burnt down in 1918, so this line was abandoned sometime after that, but it's kept open as far as 6th Street right into the 1990s. They'd roll down here and then back around this connector and into the yard. Leaving, they would pull out and back around this way and go. In the late 1960s, the line was extended on the north side of the river, 11 miles east of the city, out to the new Prince Albert pulp mill. So here is the layout design. It's in a what looks an awful lot like in a two-car attached garage, complete with two garage doors. There's never been a car in this garage. It was built as a layout room. We won't get into that story right now. What you see in red is constructed. What's in gray is underway, although all the bench work is now complete. Essentially, the center area here is the city of Prince Albert with the Canadian Northern Yard, Canadian Pacific Yard, the Grand Trunk Yard. We got some staging back in here, some more staging here representing Saskatoon from the south. And basically come out and the line around the pulp mill goes here, around to the town of Shellbrook, which represents the Blaine Lake subdivision. The junction there with trains heading further west to staging or heading north up through Debden, which was the junction where CPR split off Canadian National into Big River and Canadian Pacific into Meadow Lake. I also have the opportunity here to put in a continuous run. And I've actually already started building some of it, although I've never put in operation, is the possibility for a second deck. So if that ever happens, we'll put a helix in here where the south staging is and come around to another loop on the upper level. So the towns. So just on the towns that I've already built, we already talked about Prince Albert. So Debden is the junction between CN and CP. The town was switched by CN. I have two elevators. There were three on the prototype. Stock pens, a team track, Shell oil. Prototype also had Imperial oil. A coal shed. There were two in prototype and a team track. So this is a view of Debden. We've got a old Ravel station standing in for the Canadian Northern Class 4. I have the Monastery Laser Engineering kit to get the proper station there. See a couple of grain elevators. This is a bit of an unusual town because most of the town was on the left side of the tracks here and the station was on the right side. And Main Street crossed right over the middle. There was no passing siding. There was a double-ended industry track or business track. And at the far end of town, in prototype, there was a Y where the CP split off. I don't have room for the Y, so it's just simply a switch. Here's just a view looking the other way through the town. There was on this side of the tracks, the highway actually came right about where the aisle is. There were service stations and restaurants, some of which still exist, that were built sort of between the tracks and the highway. And one final view. This little Rick's Quonset hut, I've got 3 more of these. I'm going to put them all together, and that's going to be the Debden curling rink. 2 rinks, natural ice. Okay, Leoville is the least prototypical town on the layout. I just picked that name because Leoville is halfway between Debden and Meadow Lake, and it's the biggest town between Debden and Meadow Lake. And really, it's right adjacent to Debden on the model. The CP did used the one leg of the Y as a bit of a team track and industry track in Debden. So initially, just put in a single-ended spur to represent that. I've put in a grain elevator. There were 2 on the prototype. I'm also doing pulpwood loading there. And the real Leoville had an Imperial Oil depot as well. And that's really just a single spur. And this switch here is the north switch at Debden, and then this switch is Toby Junction, which is the line coming around the front here to Big River, and on the back to Meadow Lake. So we get to the town of Big River. So it was a CN branch line terminal. It was the most northerly point on the CN in Saskatchewan. Sawmill is the major industry. There have been several sawmills there over the years. They tend to burn down every 10 years or so they can rebuild. The mill that was built in 1910, which was the Louder Lake Lumber Company, was reportedly the largest sawmill in the British Empire at that time. What really surprises a lot of people is there was a fish processing plant there that lasted into the 1970s. And well into the 50s and perhaps beyond, they actually shipped fresh fish in express refrigerator cars out of Big River. And I really wanted to capture that. So other industries, there's a grain elevator, stock pens, team track, coal shed, a warehouse, Imperial Oil, and the prototype also had a Shell Oil depot. I learned from some of the history books that Big River is far enough north that is well into the forest. There is some agriculture, but not a lot. And the grain elevator there often got more animal feed in than it shipped grain out. So here's sort of the start of the town of Big River. The track plan is somewhat based on the prototype. I had difficulty finding the track arrangement. It wasn't a standard track arrangement. It was sort of went all over the place. Again, like Debden, the station was on the opposite side of the tracks from most of the town. Behind the town, where the wall is, would have been it actually is Cowan Lake, which is an artificial lake that was made so they could float logs down to the sawmill. There were a lot of company houses there that looked an awful lot like the City Classics company house. And I've seen old photographs from the 1910s where there, 30 or 40 of these. I actually have 4 of the kits. So you want to have and there's still probably a dozen still standing today and still being lived in, including some right across from where the station is. And there's a view looking the other way. Again, Main Street comes in, crosses all the tracks. So I have a couple of Main Street buildings in there. This large mock-up here is for the hotel, which was a brick hotel built in 1926. It's still in operation. Again, this is probably about 75% of prototype length and a little bit narrower. And the prototype then actually turned and had another wing that was L-shaped building and goes way back. And the grain elevator was sitting right next to it. And a bit further down, here's the coal shed and Waite Fisheries building. The width is correct. The length is about half the length of the prototype. It was a very long, narrow building. It had the upper floor had at the far end, had a fish filtering plant where the fish should be processed. Underneath it, on the main floor, was a freezer plant. They actually had the big cooling tower on the roof to run the cold storage. They had their corporate offices were in there. And then this end was a department store, originally set up as a company store. And even long after the fishery business shut down, it continued to operate as a department store on both floors. The Waites also happened to own the coal yard and the Esso bulk dealer and a few other things in town. So a very important business. I've got found some prototypical photos of this end of the building from the mid 50s, and it still shows a express refrigerator car behind the building being loaded with fish. Okay, so this right now is a stand-in for the, again, Waites were busy. They had a warehouse in town as well. This is a Campbell stockyard, which will be built there, Imperial Oil bulk plant, and then the sawmill in this area. As I said, there were several sawmills over the years. There's still an active one at Bodmin, 5 miles south of the town proper, probably to keep it away. When it catches on fire, it won't burn the town down or anything like that. But they do seem to burn down with great regularity. My era is the late 1960s, and this is roughly where the mill was at that time. It burnt down in 1969 and was relocated, would be way off to the right here somewhere at that time. And then a few years later, it burnt down again and they relocated 5 miles south to Bodmin at that time. Okay, Meadow Lake. So Meadow Lake is the most northerly railway in Saskatchewan and the most northerly point on the CPR anywhere. On the prototype, there were 8 grain elevators. They actually claimed to have the largest capacity anywhere on the prairies for storing grain was in Meadow Lake. I think there's 1 or 2 towns that had 9 elevators, but they were smaller. I'm doing 4 elevators on my model because there were only 4 companies represented. And there were 4 fuel dealers on the prototype. I'm getting 3 on the model, so Imperial Oil, British American, and Co-op. There also was Shell Oil there. And there was a sawmill, and it still is a sawmill in Meadow Lake. There's actually now also a pulp mill and an OSB mill. And of course, you also have team tracks, stock pens, freight house, a coal shed, and a hardware warehouse. So here's where I'm doing the sawmill. That's basically a Walther's kit, which happens to fit in there. I got the impression that in later years, the main purpose of the Meadow Lake sawmill for a number of years was to produce wood chips for the Prince Albert pulp mill. If they happen to get a few 2x4s out of there in the process, that was okay too. A little bit further down through the town, this is a mock-up of the Type 15 CP station that was there, a mock-up of the standard CP freight shed. Some of the tracks are not quite prototypical here, but they're, relatively in the right location. And there's just another close-up view of the station. There was a fertilizer warehouse here, which is not actually on the track. So I'm assuming they were served off the team track or by trucks. And here's sort of the cluster. The bulk stations, they're actually in prototype. There were 3 of them clustered very tightly together here: Imperial, British American, and Shell. And each just had a 1-car spot. And I figured I got room for 2. If I really wanted to, I'm also doing a coal shed here. If I got rid of the coal shed, I could do the 3 bulk plants, but I think the 2 kind of gives that feeling. And they were quite literally just jammed right one next to the other. And then the elevators, so got Pioneer, Federal here. There was a small piece between the 2 midway between the elevators, a small parcel of land that was said to be metal salvage. So I'm assuming that was a scrapyard. Get down a bit further and get the Searle elevator and the Saskatchewan wheat pool. So in the prototype, there were 3 wheat pool elevators, 2 Searle, 2 Federal, and 1 Pioneer. Where this tank car is parked, this is the co-op bulk plant. All that they had alongside the tracks was just a standpipe. And then from there, they had an underground pipeline that went way back across the street and into a large tank farm, which was several hundred feet away from the tracks. So if you're doing a bulk oil depot, you don't need to model anything other than just a standpipe and just say, oh yeah, the tanks are way over there somewhere. And here's a standard CPR 3-car stockyard. There actually were 2 of those metal, like they actually had 6-car capacity. At the far end of getting towards the end of track, highway number 4 crosses the tracks, and there were some typical highway type industries there. I'm going to be doing a car dealership here, and a service station, and a small motel on the other side. Just give you a bit closer. So this was called the Gateway Motor Court. The prototype was on the other side of the tracks out here in the aisleway. But I'm going to do it here. I've actually found a couple of photographs, and this is pretty close to the way it was laid out. So it was a Esso service station with a restaurant in front and about a 6 or 7 room motel in the back that was sort of rather crudely built. This line was, the track ended in Meadow Lake, but the original intent was that line was going to go all the way to Lac La Biche, Alberta. And this would have been about the midway point on the line where it would connect with the Northern Alberta Railways. Okay, that sort of shows what's built. So, planned operations. So I started looking at what are the what goods are being shipped in and out, and where are they coming from, where are they going to. So manufactured goods, and so we'll talk the CN side for starters. So Speed Freight's delivered manufactured goods from the CN main line in Saskatoon, which is south staging to the Prince Albert Yard. And then from there, Way Freights and mixed trains spread out to deliver the goods to small towns, both modeled and in staging. I think they dispatched Way Freights and mixed trains to about 6 or 7 different branch lines out of Prince Albert. Fuel was similar, oil from off-layout refineries, and even in the late 60s, still a little bit of coal coming in from off-layout mines. Coal was shipped in boxcars on the prairies, not in hopper cars, not in gondola cars, in boxcars. And I know from a friend of mine that they were still doing that in the early 70s when his uncle happened to have the contract to supply coal to the local hospital in Lucky Lake, Saskatchewan. And what he did was he'd hire Chris and his high school buddies when a carload came in to shovel coal out of the car and into the coal shed. And when it was time to deliver another load to the hospital, shovel it out of the coal shed and into the truck. So the oil companies that operated in this area, so Imperial Oil, and I'm going to have bulk plants in Prince Albert, Big River, and Meadow Lake. British American Oil, or BA, Prince Albert, Shelbrook, and Meadow Lake. Shell Oil in Prince Albert and Debden. Texaco in Prince Albert, and Federated Co-op in Meadow Lake. And these tend to be the common ones you'd see. There was a few Canadian Oil, also known as White Rose, around, but then they were bought out by Shell. Likewise, North Star was quite common at one time. They were bought out by Shell. And I'm trying to think, you did see the odd Husky Oil and the odd Pacific 66, but they were pretty rare. So grain, of course, is a big part of the traffic. So the typical grains would be wheat, oats, barley, rapeseed, which is now known as canola, rye, and flax. So the way freights and mixed trains would collect the grain from the country elevators, deliver it to Prince Albert, and then grain drags deliver the grain to the Lakehead, the West Coast, and Churchill. And from the 1965 edition of the Atlas of Saskatchewan, I discovered that for my area, in the mid-60s, roughly 50% of the grain went to the Lakehead, 25% to the West Coast, and 25% to Churchill. And the grain companies, Saskatchewan Wheat Pool, are going to have several wheat pool elevators. It was, of course, a farmer-owned cooperative. Cereal grain was the next most common one, then Federal Grain, and then Pioneer Grain. Federal bought Searle in about 1970, and then the wheat bought Federal out in about 1973. So they all became one. So one of the reasons for wanting to keep before 1970 is so all the towns don't just have wheat pool elevators. Companies that were common I didn't model were National Grain, United Grain Growers, McCabe Grain, and Parrish and Heimbecker. I really wanted to do a National Grain because it seemed like all the towns I chose not to model had a National Grain elevator. I seemed to pick the only towns in that whole part of the country that didn't have a national elevator. United Grain Growers, there was a few, but they were quite rare in that part of the province, more common down south. And I've seen no record of any McCabe or Parrish and Heimbecker that far north, although they're very common further south. And Parrish and Heimbecker still exists. National Grain is now Cargill. And I guess Pioneer Grain is now Richardson Pioneer. And United Grain Growers, McCabe Grain, when United Grain Growers bought McCabe, I believe. And then United Grain Growers, as well as the Prairie Pools, all became Viterra. So livestock. So light freights and mixed trains will collect livestock from stock pens delivered to Prince Albert. Same thing again. And the speed freights move some of the livestock to the Winnipeg stockyards and then to feedlots in southern Ontario. And the remainder of livestock goes to slaughterhouses in Western Canada. And the beef from these operations is either processed for local consumption or shipped to processors in Quebec. A few years ago in the CP Historical Association's magazine, there was an article on livestock and meat movements on the CPR. And it was quite interesting that apparently a lot of the livestock was shipped to southern Ontario to be fattened in feedlots in southern Ontario on corn. However, I know there's a lot of people from Ontario on here. People in Western Canada believe that corn-fed beef is how would you put it? It's not to be done because it makes the meat too fat, whereas grain-fed or grass-fed beef is leaner and better for you. And apparently, Québécois agree with that. So the Québécois wanted the grain-fed and grass-fed beef from Western Canada. They didn't want the corn-fed beef out of Ontario. So it was sort of turned into a two different markets. So either you ship the livestock to southern Ontario to be fed on corn, or you feed it locally and then slaughter it in Western Canada and ship it by refrigerator car to Quebec. And then the Maritimes, they would just buy out of either Ontario or Quebec. Okay, so other agricultural products, alfalfa pellets are fairly big business in that part of the province. They have big alfalfa dehydrating plants all over the place, and the pellets are then used for animal feed. Hay, out of the farther northern regions, there's a lot of hay is grown, and it's mostly just shipped to southern Saskatchewan. You can tell when it's a dry year because you see, and nowadays it's all done by truck, but you just see semi-loads of hay heading south. Mustard seed. Saskatchewan is the world's largest producer of mustard seed. Chances are when you're buying mustard, it came from Saskatchewan. It's something like 80% of the world market. More recently, there's a lot of peas and lentils growing, especially in the more northern parts of the province. And something in my research I discovered is how much honey is produced. And I saw a list of team track customers for Prince Albert. There was like 9 or 10 different apiaries that actually shipped on a regular basis by rail. And then we also talked a bit earlier about the fish. So fresh fish will be shipped from Big River to eastern markets by express reefers on passenger trains. The other big source is forest products. So I have lumber, which is being shipped from sawmills in Big River, which is on layout in Hudson Bay and Carrot River, which are in staging. And when I say Hudson Bay, I mean the town of Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, not the big bay further north. It's actually where the junction and south end of the Hudson Bay Railway is, and it's about 150 miles straight east of Prince Albert. And it is a fairly important lumbering center. Then pulpwood and wood chips will be shipped from the sawmills to the Prince Albert pulp mill. And then the finished wood pulp would be shipped from the Prince Albert pulp mill to domestic and international customers, basically paper makers. So the wood pulp is the first step in the paper making process. And the paper mills will buy wood pulp from several different pulp mills and then blend it to get the desired quality. Okay, so on the Canadian Pacific side, it's going to be similar to the CN operations. The connection on the main line is by east staging. There was no grain shipped off the CPR to Churchill, so it's 2/3 to the Lakehead, 1/3 to the West Coast. The pulp mill and most of the industries in Prince Albert were joint access to both railways. So they will be switching those. But in general, the CPR will handle about half the traffic that the CN side will handle. Passenger service, I have inflated this because I like passenger trains. Mid-60s, in reality, there were twice daily Saskatoon to Prince Albert trains. One was a conventional train handling mainly mail and express, and the other was a rail liner or RDC car. I'm not too sure exactly how they handled the fish out of Big River, whether they just handled it on the mixed trains or whether they ran a passenger extra. But anyway, I'm deciding that I'm going to have a Prince Albert Big River passenger train to handle the fish traffic. Another thing I'm putting on is what I call the Northern Continental. I discovered that in the early 60s, CN started running the Continental via the old Canadian Northern Main Line and ran the Supercontinental on the old Grand Trunk Pacific Main Line. And I decided to take it one step further, that the Continental would be split every other day, and one day would run the old Canadian Northern Main, and the next day it would run what was also the Canadian Northern North Main, which would go through Prince Albert. So that gives me a chance to have a little bit more elaborate passenger train. And there were, of course, tri-weekly mixed trains and bi-weekly mixed trains and even weekly mixed trains that ran out of Prince Albert to a variety of locations. And in my era, they were still running them to Hudson Bay, North Battleford, and Turtleford. The Hudson Bay mixed train lasted until 1977. The other two came off about 10 years before that. Canadian Pacific, they did have at one time a daily train from Regina to Prince Albert, including a sleeping car. That came off in the early 60s, but I'm going to extend it. There were tri-weekly mixed trains from Prince Albert to Meadow Lake, and then they also some days ran that down to North Battleford. That train lasted until 1972. And I'm also considering I might just run a conventional passenger train all the way up to Meadow Lake if I decide I'm going to be shipping fish on that line as well. I then took a look at how many crews I was going to need. So CN Yard Master will look after classification in the CN Yard in Prince Albert. I will handle trains to and from south staging and east staging. and will do any paperwork. And there will be a CN assistant yard master helping them out, who will switch all the Prince Albert Industries and switch the pulp mill. So it'll keep 2 switch engines busy there. The road crews, I see 2 road crews, one running the trains between Prince Albert and West Staging, and the other one operating the trains between Big River and Prince Albert. CP, again, like I said, about half the traffic is CN. So a yard master that will do classification in the yard, run the trains to and from East Staging, switch to Prince Albert Industries, and switch to the pulp mill. The CP road crew will then operate the trains between Prince Albert and Meadow Lake, and also trains between Meadow Lake and West Staging to represent the Medstead subdivision trains. So currently, because the Prince Albert yard isn't there yet and the pulp mill isn't there yet, we're running the following trains. Prince Albert and North Battleford are both represented at this time by West Staging. So on the Canadian National side, I have a way freight originating in Big River at the beginning of the session. So someone actually zipped the train to come up the day before. They stayed overnight. This next morning they're coming back on duty, so they need to go pick up all the cars scattered around town and make up their train and run it into Prince Albert. Then to deal with the fish traffic, I run a passenger train out of Prince Albert up the Big River, rearranges the train, switches the fish plant and a couple other things, and then returns. And then at the end of the session, we run away freight out of Staging back up to Big River and then spot all the industries. And then that equipment stays over till the next session. On the CP, I alternate way freights and mixed trains. So a way freight or mixed train will originate in Prince Albert, run to Meadow Lake. That crew and engine will then run from Meadow Lake to North Battleford. And then we also run an opposite one, which is originating in North Battleford to Meadow Lake, and then the same crew and engine return from Meadow Lake to Prince Albert. In real life, in the late 60s, actually a crew with the mixed train would leave Prince Albert every Monday morning, run to Meadow Lake. Tuesday, they would run from Meadow Lake down to North Battleford. Wednesday, they'd run from North Battleford up to Meadow Lake. And Thursday, they'd run back to Prince Albert. So that crew was out for 4 days. So I'm sort of doing all that in 1 day on the model. So what are my next steps? I think, as I mentioned, bench work is now complete. I should have the track from Big River Junction to the pulp mill operating by year end. I then need to reconfigure the east and west staging yards and start work on the Prince Albert yard, finish the town of Shellbrook, build south staging, and in future I may replace the south staging with a helix and add a second level. So just a little bit. So PAPCO, or the Prince Albert Pulp Mill, it will be the largest industry on the layout and switched by both CN and CP. Here's where we were as of yesterday. So I got the track center lines measured out, and that's about it. So the mill trains will back into this track. We have the chlorine delivery here, liquid chemicals, dry chemicals, 2 warehouse tracks, one for CP, one for CN. This track over here, fuel delivery, and also a bit of a team track for other deliveries to the mill. There also was there was another team track near the mill, which handles shipments from a couple of other industries, which I'll also probably do with that. And then over here is the wood yard where the wood chips and pulpwood is received. And there you see it just looking from the other direction. You can see Big River in the background and my bit of upper level, which I built. And then just a close-up of the wood yard. I decided not to put a runaround inside the mill complex. So the trains will come out of Prince Albert, they'll run the Shellbrook, do their runaround there, come back and then back into the mill. This switch here will lead to a switch lead, so they won't have to follow the main line while they're switching the mill facility. And then the town of Shellbrook, which is the last major town to be developed other than the yards. So it is the junction between the Blaine Lake and Big River subdivisions. I'm going to have 3 or 4 grain elevators. There were actually 5 on the prototype. 1 or 2 fuel dealers. There were 2 on the prototype. Team track, stock pens, a fertilizer warehouse, and a coal shed. What I find quite interesting is that the fertilizer warehouse was actually owned by Cominco, and Cominco was owned by Canadian Pacific. So I'm assuming that was a lot of fertilizer coming in from their fertilizer plant in Rossland, British Columbia. So I'm going to have to interchange carloads of fertilizer coming off the CP to get sent into Shellbrook on the CN. And again, track center lines laid out. There were 5 tracks in Shellbrook, so this one is a house track which had the fertilizer. I'm assuming the fertilizer warehouse is there. I can't quite find out where it is, but I got room for it there. And the team track. This is the main line, passing siding, a storage track, and then a business track for the stock pens and elevators and the bulk oil plant. One of the things I'm going to do with this storage track, so trains coming off the Big River subdivision, any westbound traffic, they will set off here and not haul it back to Prince Albert. So then trains heading west will pick up the traffic here. And likewise, traffic from the west heading for Big River will be set off here and then picked up by the Big River train. That should take some of the load off of the Prince Albert yard. And then just a couple of other photos where it's at. This is these are the supports for the future backdrop that will be going in there. Okay, that's pretty well it. I'm just going to call to your attention, though, to some websites. So the first one is for the Canadian Pacific Historical Association. I'm also involved with the Saskatchewan Railway Museum, and we have roughly 400 plus station grounds plans from the northern half of Saskatchewan from the CPR. They've all been scanned, and they are available for anyone to download on the CP HA website. Another site which can occupy several hundred hours is the prairietowns.com website, which is guys doing, they're mostly from postcards, but a collection of photographs from towns and cities in Western Canada. He's covering all 4 Western provinces now. There's roughly 20,000 images. There's 9,000 from Saskatchewan alone, and it's quite well organized. You click province and you click letter of the alphabet, and then you pick the town that you want to look at. And it might be 1 photograph, it might be 20 or 30 photographs. Another interesting one, which will also waste a lot of time, are the Everett Baker slides. So Everett Baker was a field representative for the Saskatchewan wheat pool starting in the 1930s until he retired in the mid-60s. In about 1939, there were a lot of refugees from the Sudetenland, which is part of Czechoslovakia, I believe, who made their way to Canada. And the Canadian government, in their wisdom, gave them a quarter section or 160 acres of bushland up near Meadow Lake, and told them, "You're now farmers. Here's your farm." And these are almost all city people. So the wheat pool decided they would try to help these people along. So Everett got sent up there, and he encountered one family that had managed to smuggle out a 35 millimeter camera, which, with the hopes of selling it to get a little bit of cash. Of course, up in the wilderness there's no one wanted to buy a camera like that. So Everett bought the camera from them for $100, which would probably give them groceries for the winter in 1940. and with the idea that he would resell it when he got back to Regina. He got back to Regina, he went into the camera store, and the guy in the camera store said, "Oh, Leica, that's neat." He says, "We just got this new film called Kodachrome. You might want to try a roll." He did. There are now, in this Everett Baker slides, there are 10,000 slides, Kodachrome slides, that Everett took in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s across Saskatchewan. Again, organized by town. You can go down a huge rabbit hole there. And a lot of it, because he worked for the wheat pool, he did take a lot of pictures of wheat pool elevators. And the wheat pool, of course, was also associated with the co-op movement. So a lot of pictures of co-op oil depots and co-op service stations and co-op lumber yards and co-op grocery stores, plus a lot of other just pictures of everything from across the province. Another really interesting site. And the final one is for the Layout Design Special Interest Group. I'm on the board of directors of the LDSIG. We publish a magazine called the Layout Design Journal. And in the next issue of the journal, there will be an article I wrote on prairie towns and how to model them. And that magazine should be coming out at the end of the month. If you're not a member, you can go to the website and you can join up. There is a electronic membership where the magazine comes to you digitally at a very reasonable rate, as opposed to what I pay because I like to get the hard copy, because postage is very expensive, as is the color printing. But just a thing for that too. So if anyone has any questions, I'm willing to answer them or try to.
Thank you, Carl. I have a question or two. First, I congratulate you. You have some very interesting work ahead of you on this layout. Do you have an estimate of crew size you would need for operating sessions?
I'm aiming at, okay, that's what gets interesting, because doing both CN and CP, so to do a full session, it's going to take a minimum of 6 crews and probably one person to supervise the whole mess, which would be me. But if we run just the CN, then we only need 4 crews. And if we run just the CP, then we only need 2 crews.
Yeah, these are 2-person crews, huh?
No, the intent is that they be one person.
Okay.
Yeah, but they could go 2-person. You know, to get 6 2-person crews in the room is going to get crowded.
Okay.
What we've been doing so far, because right now we only run 2 crews. A lot of times we do run a 2-person crew. But you know, I suspect the yard crews, I think, would be 1 person, but the road crews could go 2-person.
Okay, well, the question is, you mentioned having the yard master do switching some towns and classifying. How would that be managed? How would the yard master have time to do that?
Well, the idea is that the main thing that the yard master would be doing on the CN side would mainly be just classifying the yard and running the trains in from staging, which is just a very short run in. The assistant yard master would then switch to local industries. On the CP side, there's not that much work for them to do because there's not that many trains. So that's why he has more tasks. Mm-hmm. We'll see how it works out once we get that built.
Okay, thanks, Cal. Okay. Anybody else?
Cal, are you using cards or computer program? What are you using for your control?
Oh, don't know. What previous layout I've used both in the past. What I'm using right now is my own spreadsheet to create switch lists and yard lists and things like that, based on a system I'm calling virtual car carts. And if I ever perfect it, I may write an article on it. But basically what I do is, right now, there's, I don't know, there might be 50 cars on the layout right now. So I have them all in a spreadsheet, and I basically just have a random numbers generators and stuff like that to create the demand. And then I assign cars off the spreadsheet and just print out a switch list. And that's what we're doing right now. Whether that will survive as the layout gets more complex, I don't know.
And I assume you're using DCC, are you?
Yes. Initially, the layout was built using the old Atlas Commander system, which will not support my sound-equipped locomotives.
Mm-hmm.
So a year ago, I upgraded to the TCS system. At this point, I just have one throttle, but a friend of mine has another throttle, TCS throttle, that he uses with his Digitrack, which seamlessly works with my system. And another friend has a proto throttle, which we're going to try as well. Mm-hmm. And if I buy another module, I can then also use smartphones if people want to try that. So, but I don't have the module. I'm planning on buying myself another throttle for Christmas.
Is your garage standalone, like stand away from the house, or is it attached?
It's an attached garage. There's a long story behind it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it, Cal.
Yeah, well, when we bought my partner came to me one day and she said, "I found us the perfect house. It's on 6 acres of land. It was built in 1899 because she likes old houses. It's got a barn. It's got a pasture. We can bring the horses out there." But she said, "But there's no space in the house for her trains." And I said, "Well, what's perfect about this?" She says, we can get it from a friend of a friend as a private sale, and we'll have enough money left over that we can build a train room. And the idea was there was a 3-car detached garage, and that I would build a room onto the back of the detached garage. We went to the municipality. The municipality says you can't do that because the footprint of your outbuildings cannot exceed the finished square footage of your house. And because of the barn and the 3-car garage, we basically had been grandfathered in because they've made the zoning change after this stuff had been built. And we actually were in a deficit by about 150 square feet. So we have to build 150 square feet of house to get even. But they said, and I said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want a heated workshop," is what I told them. They said, "Well, we'll give you a permit to build an attached garage if you build a finished room over top." So what we did was and of course then we had what's called scope creep. So we got basically a 2-car garage plus a heated workshop next to it. It measures 24 feet by 32 feet, and then finished space above that we finished off as a granny flat. Right now we're just actually, we're using it as living space right now, but it's to actually rent it out, we'd have to go back and get further permission. But it's set up so with a minimal amount of work, you could, once you got the permits, you could convert it over to a granny flat in about 2 days. So both for resale and possibly even eventually us doing that. So.
Sorry, how big is the railway room itself?
24 by 24.
Okay.
And then there's a 8 by 24 indoor workshop next to it. So. And again, we put in the overhead doors. We didn't put in the door openers, but it's all wired for the door openers. So, again, sort of a resale thing. If it's sold, then a new owner, if they want to park a car in there and they want to have an automatic door opener, they just got to buy the door opener, put it in there, plug it in. The wires are all there to hook up all the push buttons and stuff that they'll need.
Right.
And while I was at it, put in hot water in-floor heat as well, which is really nice.
Any other questions for Cal? I can't see you all. Maybe you could stop sharing now, Cal.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I just sometimes people want to
There you go. Yeah, I know.
see a specific slide again. So
Yeah, we may ask you to go back, but anyway, now I can see most people. Is there any other questions? I can see a white hand. Is that Philip? No?
I see Miles.
Cal, are you running solo there? Are you a member of a railroad club there in Saskatchewan?
I not really a club member. I do very active in the local railway museum, and there's sort of a very informal group of about 4 of us, or maybe it's 5 now, that go for lunch once a month and play with each other's trains. But I don't belong to the formal club. They're too much in the modules.
Did you say your garage has in-floor heating?
Yes.
Oh, sweet. Does it keep it warm enough out there in Saskatchewan?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's beautifully toasty warm in there. It takes a while to. What I find with it it takes a while to get that slab heated up, but once the slab is heated up, it's it's actually like a big heat sink down there. And the dogs love to go down there and sleep on the concrete floor because it's warm. And then we also use hot water heat in the room above, but it's just baseboard. And again, what I find is it's a much more even heat than the hot air. The rest of the house with the hot air, like it seems to cool down, and then the furnace kicks in and it heats up. Of course, being built in 1899, the insulation is not all that great.
You have a question there, Dick? No. Okay. Anyone else?
I might have missed that part of the presentation. Where did the fish come from? From a lake or the river, or the fish farms?
Oh, they come out of the lakes in northern Saskatchewan. Yeah, I didn't really get into that. I just said, yeah, there is an active freshwater fishery in northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba, and northern Alberta. And whitefish, lake trout, jackfish, which I think everyone else calls northern pike, pickerel, all very common. And they would ship at one time, and I think they still do. They ship right to the eastern markets in the U.S. There's actually one of the fish plants actually brings a rabbi in every summer to inspect the plants so they can sell them to kosher markets in New York City.
I found your research very interesting. I hadn't realized there would have been such a variety of products being shipped from there. So, I mean, I'm from the Regina a long time ago. Used to live up in Flin Flon, go fishing in Creighton, which is all the lakes up there in northern Saskatchewan. Caught all those, jackfish and pickerel and everything. My mom hated the jackfish. Too many bones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm working on I belong to a module club here in Ottawa, and I'm building a module of Kalonsi. So
okay. Now, did you realize, of course, Kalonsi is one of the towns that we have the station grounds plans for at the museum, and is available on the CP Historical Association website.
Yeah, I looked up on the website when you posted the list there, and I guess I have to sign up or something too. But
Yeah. You don't have to join the association. They just want you to register.
Yeah, my uncle's family's farms were about, I guess, 1 mile from the station. And way back when they used to farm dairy,
Hmm.
they had a little stop at the end of the road where the tracks cross. They'd load up the milk cans.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not doing that era.
You know, I can remember it would have been, I'm going to say summer 67 or 68. We were camping out at Memorial Lake, which is straight west of Prince Albert. And the mix train from Turtleford to Prince Albert came into the station, and they were loading cream cans into the combine.
Yeah. A lot of manual work then.
Cal,
thank you.
what are the major industries now?
Still quite similar. I mean, a lot of agriculture, obviously. There still are a lot of wood products. Some of the sawmills and pulp mills and other industries seem to come and go.
Okay.
You know, like they'll be there and then they're gone, and then they're back again. But I think right now, I mean, there's the Big River sawmill's up and going full tilt again, and I think there's still one going in Meadow Lake. There's a big one in Carrot River. I think Simpson Timber is still going in Hudson Bay. There's a plywood plant in Hudson Bay. There's OSB mills in Hudson Bay and Meadow Lake, and there's a pulp mill in Meadow Lake. The pulp mill in Prince Albert is shut down now, but there's I don't know if Carrier Lumber, which was built right next to the pulp mill in Prince Albert, might still be going. If nothing else, they're using it as a reload now because they also own the mill in Big River, and the tracks are gone to Big River now. So they truck 60 miles out of Big River into Prince Albert and then reload onto the rail cars.
Any mining?
Hmm?
Any mining? Oh.
Mining? Not really in that area. I mean, there's the further south, there's the potash mines,
Okay.
which is a huge business. And then you get up, like say, the Flin Flon Creighton area, you've got the hard rock mining there. But and northern Saskatchewan, a lot of uranium mining, but again, that's beyond the end of rail, and as far as you know, everything is trucked.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any final thoughts, questions? Okay, well, I want to thank Cal. It was a terrific talk, very enjoyable. We learned a lot from it, and we wish you every success with your layout plans there. I want to acknowledge Willie Waith. He helps me put these programs together. I appreciate the help. And next month is a little bit up in the air. It's supposed to be on December the 15th. Michael Hodgson. And the problem with that one is that he is a CN engineer, actually, and he's on call sometimes. So we're not sure yet whether we can confirm that one or not, but we'll keep everybody in touch with that one.
I'm doing all I can to put the odds in our favor.
Sounds good, Michael. Sorry, I didn't see you way down in the corner there.
No worries. I'm in the car driving my daughter to karate class right now.
Oh, I see. The wonders of today's electronics, eh?
Yes.
Can you give us a quick overview of what you're going to be talking about?
Yes. We're going to talk about my layout, the Caribou Chilcotin Railway, which is a prototypical freelance railway based on the PGE with strong influences of the Nakusp and Slocan railways. We're going to be talking about my design choices, and because of my career with the railway, my goals on making as prototypical as possible and as much close to if this was a real railway, how it would look and run. I've been modeling for 30 something years and have 20 years of that through about 5 or 6 versions of the same railway. They've started out modern, went to the transition era, and my latest layout is now set to the 1920s. I keep seeming to go backwards with each version. And hopefully everyone will enjoy it.
Good. Okay, thanks, Michael. Could you perhaps, if you have time, send me a bit more of an abstract of your talk?
Sure.
Just
I'm still trying to wing it together here.
Okay, just so I can spread it around a bit before your talk.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, and as always, if you would like to make a presentation, please get in touch with either myself or Willie, and we'll schedule you. We are actually have speakers lined up till the end of April, so we're doing well. I know Jerry's nodding her head there. She's always looking for speakers. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Again, my apologies for being a little bit late, but anyway, a very enjoyable evening. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording.